Good morning. Welcome to Protection Review 2022 at the wonderful Landmark Hotel. We said it last year, but it's worth repeating, and I think loudly, that during a global pandemic, did life and health insurers close their doors? Did they pull products? Did prices shoot up? Nope. None of these things happened. The industry kept going, kept protecting people, and kept paying claims. For obvious reasons, we're not quite smashing it sales-wise right now. But all things considered, the market is strong. This industry is resilient. The country is better off for it. And I'd like to praise every single insurer and advisor who has continued to work to get more people better protected. Plus, industry events are back with a bang this year. I was lucky enough to be at Cover, H&P, Amy, Guru, CI Expert, Widows, Money Facts, Headline Money, and more, and thoroughly enjoyed all of them. I'd also like to flag some of the brilliant work around the industry lately. There is far too much to mention, so apologies for what I've missed. But Amy's viewpoint, IPAW, Deadline to the Breadline, Health, Wealth and Happiness, our brilliant trade press, numerous trade organisations, and much more. We are living in challenging times, though. And while you don't need me to remind you what is on the news every day, these events should encourage us to stop and consider how and where we might be able to be a little bit better. Indeed, should we be better? Must we be better? That's what today is all about. So let's look at what's happening in the market in a little bit of detail. We have some data from our friends at iPipeline, which goes up to October. This slide shows 21 versus 22. Not that much has changed, does it, actually? And this next slide shows the product mix over the same period. Not too much has changed there either, actually. So do ask iPipeline if you want to know more, especially what might be happening in November, which is not on these slides. But it's not all doom and gloom. Although I think we all realise there are serious challenges ahead. November and December may well see falling numbers, which may well continue into next year. But we have budget plans, we have short-term plans, we have great advisors, and the importance of value and quality when reviewing client needs, not just price, may literally now be more important than ever. Especially if like-for-like cover, as people get older, might not be as cheap as it once was. There was a time when you could just rebroke. Didn't matter if they were older, it was still cheaper. Probably not the case anymore. So, let me thank you all for being here today. Protection Review is all about encouraging people to think that little bit differently. We won't tell you what the answers are. You're a smart audience. And that's what we hope to achieve today. That spark of an idea, a slightly new way of thinking, a challenge to the current way of doing something. We always get lots of feedback after Protection Review events, often from senior decision makers who say it was X speaker or a certain panel that might just have changed how they think about a key issue. And next year is a busy one for us. We have the launch of our Young Achiever Academy and also our first ever Protect Z event, specifically for the under 30s in the industry. Our partner this year is Baton of Hope. And we have a hugely important talk for you now. Mike McCarthy has worked as a journalist in newspapers, radio, and television for almost 40 years, including the BBC and Sky. He has covered wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, terrorist attacks, politics in Washington, riots in Athens, and sporting triumphs across Europe. He set up Baton of Hope, which aims to be the biggest ever suicide prevention initiative in the UK. Please kindly welcome Mike McCarthy.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you to Protection Review for inviting me here today. Thanks also to Jo Miller, I don't know where she is, for your excellent support over the past few weeks and months, Jo. I'm really grateful for the invitation, but I shouldn't be here. In the life that I'd imagined for myself, this wouldn't be happening. And what I mean by that is we need to wind the clock back to the 20th of February last year. On the 20th of February last year, I went to bed and simply can't remember what I was thinking. Did I thank my lucky stars for the blessings that I'd received in life? Most importantly of all, my beautiful family. And I look back and I try to remember, what was I thinking that night? Did I give it a thought? And I guess, the answer is probably no. Don't get me wrong, it's not that I didn't cherish my life, it's just that I didn't cherish it enough. I've been a journalist, as Kevin said, for 40 years and had sort of recently retired. From the early days there, top right, with black hair and a mullet. This is what working in journalism does to you over 40 years, and interviewing the legendary world boxing champion Muhammad Ali, to the thousands of hours I spent in front of a camera reporting live, again, as Kevin said, from wars, floods, terrorist atrocities, you name it. To the interviews with prime ministers and so many incredibly so-called ordinary people. It was a ticket of a lifetime. I knew from an early age that this is what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to be with my life. I was very lucky in that respect, but obviously there were tough days. Days such as this, the 15th of April 1989 at the Hillsborough Stadium in Sheffield. It was almost 2 weeks after my beautiful son Ross was born, and I was on paternity leave when the phone went at home. And my then BBC News editor asked me to go to the stadium. It was just that I happened to be the one who lived closest to it. Parts of it I don't remember, other parts I remember too well. It was the first story of a global nature that I'd covered. And as you know, it was the worst footballing disaster this country has ever witnessed, with 97 football supporters ultimately losing their lives. People have asked me how you approach such horror as a journalist, and I remember the sense of detachment, not detachment from what was going on around me, the events unfolding, but a detachment from myself. Minutes earlier, I'd been mowing the lawn at home in my jeans, and then, I was suddenly faced with deep and profound, shocking, man-made horror. After then going on to, cover some of the stories that you've already heard about, I thought that I was quite tough. I thought that I developed quite a hard shell. I thought that I was resilient, and foolishly, I thought that nothing could ever hurt me again. But I was wrong. At 3:30 in the morning of the 21st of February, my phone went, and it was my son's fiancée, Charlotte. She said that she'd found Ross in the hallway and that it wasn't looking good. She said the ambulance crew were there and that she'd call me back as soon as she had any positive information. The phone went 5 minutes later, and she said that Ross had died. After I got back on my feet, I started to do some research. As a journalist, I threw myself into finding out more about the subject of suicide, this great, unspoken, hidden taboo. Ross's farewell letter, one of the things that he wrote was, "Please fight for mental health. The support is just not there." What he was referring to is that he'd suffered from severe depression for over 10 years, and he'd tried everything. He was a warrior. He wasn't other. He was me. He was you. He was, all of our sons, all of our daughters, brothers, sisters, whatever. But when he went to ask for therapy after 10 years of struggling, he was put on a 6-month waiting list. And He died 2 weeks into that wait. I've since spoken to countless mums, dads, brothers, sisters, who are in a similar situation to me. Some of whom find it very difficult to talk about for obvious reasons, but also because of the stigma around it. It's, not the kind of thing that some people want to talk about it. But I believe that if we normalise the conversation, if we open up, if we be transparent and encourage others to be, then we can break that stigma. If people feel that they're affected by stigma, they won't speak out. If they don't speak out, their mental health will only get worse. We need to be open about this. And what I've found, frankly, was a woefully inadequate health service, certainly at the crisis point when people are facing the end. I also discovered that suicide is the biggest killer of adults under 35 in the United Kingdom. Not cancer, not COVID, not road accidents, not drugs, suicide. And again, maybe this was partly the journalist in me. I thought, why aren't we talking about this? If this was soldiers dying in war, we'd be talking about it, right? We've rightly just remembered the soldiers who died in wars on the 11th of November. But more soldiers die of suicide than in armed conflict. And we don't remember them. We don't talk about them. 3/4 of the people who take their own lives are men. And I wanted to sort of, do a little bit of research about this. I set up 2 talking groups. I wanted to do something hands-on. So I set up 2 talking groups in my home city of Sheffield. One at Sheffield Wednesday, one at Sheffield United. Specifically for men to open up rather than bottle up, as we say. And I realised that, the language around masculinity in the 21st century is completely skewed. I think to the guys out there, I believe we're living a lie. Do we think boxers don't cry? Do rugby players not cry? Of course they do. And this is a sweeping generalisation, but I think when men cry, they tend to cry alone. And the language around masculinity, who put those words together? Strong, silent type. What does man up mean? It means take it on the chin, suppress it, don't share it, deal with it yourself. The language around suicide, why do we say commit suicide? The word commit goes back to pre-1961, when suicide was considered to be a crime and a sin. And I don't believe that in my lifetime, it's hard to believe that people could be and were put in prison when they survived a suicide attempt. And that's why we say commit, and I just politely ask people, don't say that. I realise now how hurtful it is, because Ross didn't commit a crime. He didn't commit a sin. The other thing, the most striking thing, I think perhaps in some ways that I came across, is that everybody accepted, all the clinicians, all the politicians, from the health secretary down, psychiatrists, psychologists, they all said suicide is preventable. So my question is, why aren't we preventing them? Do you know who the biggest threat is to children between 14 and 18? Statistically, themselves. Suicide is the biggest killer of our school children, 14 to 18. Should we be accepting this? I want to know what we can do. What can we practically do? And what I'm trying to say to people now as I sort of go around doing these talks is that we have universal responsibility. It affects every one of us. Whether it's the health secretary formulating suicide prevention strategy, or whether it's just sending an extra text to your mate saying, how are you really? We've all got a role to play. We can all talk, we can all listen. I'm just going to tell you a few things about how we were treated as a family once Ross died. And there was a huge amount of kindness and support, which we'll always be grateful for. But there was also a glacial attitude from the authorities, from the agencies. Individual people were full of compassion. But the police took away Ross's letter. And at a time when Circular conversations were going round, spinning in our minds, the whys, the what-ifs. We couldn't hear his last words. And we had to fight for a week to get the letter back. The officer who came out that morning was a good guy, full of compassion. But the system is glacial. The police computers didn't talk to the Coroner Office computers. Ross made a huge mistake. He didn't update his insurance coverage, life insurance. He'd left it in the name of a former girlfriend who he hadn't seen for 6 years. He'd since been living with his fiancée for all of those 6 years. They had a child together, Charlie. And again, the insurance company was glacial. They didn't want to talk to us. They would only talk to the beneficiary, who was Ross's ex-girlfriend. And, you know, I get it. I understand. You know, there are limitations. But the girlfriend told us she didn't want the money. We went back to the insurance company. They didn't want to talk to us. The girlfriend wrote a letter saying, please give this family the money. And they didn't want to talk to us. Fortunately, eventually, we've made some progress just recently, 21 months after we lost Ross. And again, individual people were warm and kind, but the system wasn't. So, the baton of hope. I do believe that there is hope. Suicide is preventable. We can do things. We don't have to accept this. The figures have stagnated for 20 years. And everybody's saying suicide is preventable. Well, why have they stagnated for 20 years? And I believe we've got to turn that prism around and see mental health in general in a different way. People who self-harm aren't attention-seeking, they're attention-needing. You know, we've got to change the language. We've got to change our perception. I'm just going to go through this sort of fairly quickly, if you'll forgive me. I met a wonderful guy called Steve Phillip, who lost his son, Jordan, to suicide. And Steve and I got talking. We forged an immediate bond. You know, I'm sure it'll be a lifelong friendship now. And we recognised through our loss that the one thing that unites all suicides, people say, oh, it's complex, you know, there's nothing that, it's so difficult, and it is complex, but the one thing that unites all people who take their own lives, we believe, is a loss of hope. So that's how the Baton of Hope was born. We were very fortunate. A company called Thomas Light came forward, and they said that we will craft and design and craft the baton ourselves. These are goldsmiths and silversmiths to the Queen under royal warranty. And they're doing it all for free because they believe it. They have experience in the workplace. They understand what this is about and how important it is. Just a few bits of detail on the baton itself. It's heavy with symbolism. The central lattice work represents a circular community of people who are holding each other aloft. There's an upward spiral that leads to the mouth of the baton, if you like, the semicolon. And I didn't know this until after we lost Ross, that the semicolon has become quite a symbol for hope. Amongst people particularly who've had suicidal thoughts or attempted suicide and survived. And it's a semicolon because in the sentence, a semicolon represents this is not over. There's hope, there's more to come. This is not the end of the sentence. And you'll see on some younger people in particular, semicolons tattooed on the wrist. You'll see in some parks, benches starting to appear in the shape of a semicolon. This baton will be carried around the UK in summer of next year as a symbol of unity and hope, because hope is the key thing here. We've got to restore this hope. You know, we've just tumbled out of COVID and all the isolation that led to. We're going headlong into an economic recession. And I'm, you know, tragically, in an economic recession, the suicide figures always rise. So we've got to restore hope. And it's not just an idea. We are going to practically make steps to bring about change, to challenge the status quo that's led to this stagnation for 20 years. We're drawing up a workplace charter, a kite mark, a gold standard of best practice that employers will be able to use to show the world, to show their employees, we believe in the mental health of our employees. It'll be a signal not only to the people who work for them, but for people who they hope to recruit, that this company takes your mental health as seriously as it does your physical health. If Ross had gone to hospital with a broken finger, sure, he might have had to sit on an uncomfortable chair for a few hours, but he would have been seen. He went to hospital with a broken mind, and he was told to go away. They say that acceptance is a major step on the way to healing. I don't think I'll ever accept that I'll never see Ross again or hear his voice. We'll never laugh again, but in his honour and in his memory, and all of those whose voices we've lost, I will do my best to make sure that society understands that these people were not other, that they were you, they were me. I'm going to leave you with a short video, just a few minutes, and a simple thought. We can all play a part in saving others by restoring hope. Thank you, and I hope that anybody who feels that they can support this new movement will do so. And can I just say as well that, Kevin, you may not see it like this, but you and Protection Review are at the forefront of something that is going to change. Change is coming. Thank you.
There's something we urgently need to talk about. Suicide. The biggest killer of men and women under 35 in the UK. 17 people will die by suicide today and tomorrow and the day after that. More than in traffic accidents. More than from cancer. And every single one is potentially preventable. Why aren't we talking about this? We need a change. The Baton of Hope UK is designed to be the biggest suicide awareness and prevention initiative the UK has ever seen. In June 2023, the Baton of Hope will tour towns and cities around the UK, raising the profile of this issue like never before. Together, we can challenge the stigma around suicide. Together, we can give hope to those who are struggling. Together, we can inspire change and make this invisible crisis an urgent national priority. It's time to unite. It's time to talk. It's time to save lives. The Baton of Hope is coming. Pass it on.